Today is Monday the 26th. We got some big things just like every week. Outside of Memorial Day, hopefully people are drinking,
Barbecuing.
having fun. We're stuck podcasting on a Monday.
Well, cybersecurity does not rest, so
It
here we
does.
are.
But today's stories are going to be Google extensions, how many there were, over 100, fake, bad, malicious.
Chrome extensions.
If you're using Chrome, chances are you might have one of these on your computer. Second story, Krebs on security. Largest DDoS attack recorded in history. What does that mean for you? What does it mean for your business? We'll talk about that. Third topic, Marks and Spencer. $400 million dusted off, gone poof. We're going to talk about what that means for them, but more importantly, what it means for businesses that haven't taken security as seriously as maybe they should.
Yep, you are watching the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damien. Troy.
And I'm Fern. Let's go. I use Google a lot. I do not download extensions, mostly because I don't ever have a need to. But that doesn't mean everyone else is in the same boat as me. And what I find interesting about this article is I didn't even know this. There's apparently a marketplace for Google extensions.
You don't add Chrome extensions onto your browser?
Hell no. Really? Never.
Yeah, I certainly have a couple, and I think reputable extensions absolutely are fine. I think it's the ones that you are just trying to find a small tool to do a niche thing, and it was written by somebody who has a few downloads. Those are more sketchy, but we have seen, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, malware wrapped in these extensions, and so Google's being proactive. They took down over 100 of them out of the Google Marketplace, and so they're trying to make your browser better and safer. But you have to do a little bit on your own here. So make sure before you add anything into the browser, you're doing your homework on it. Is it safe? Is it reputable? Do a lot of users have it? If you have like 10 downloads or 100 downloads, that's definitely a red flag. Most of these Chrome extensions have hundreds of thousands of users. Look for that. And then also, just do a quick reputation check online before you install it. Because once you do install it, it gets a lot of permissions that you don't realize. Access to your information, your search history, your browser, some of your passwords, your credit cards that you save in the browser, all those things that you don't want shared, it can get access to if it's malicious. So be careful of that.
I mean, that sounds good, but I ain't got time for that. Not that
You're just trying to install the latest Gen AI plugin, right? That's going to help you with your grammar.
I'm trying to get better at my job, so I need whatever tools I can get. I'm not cheating. I'm just trying to be better, right? Now, what I believe might be true, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, is Google extensions do not require admin privileges.
Chrome extension, with the Chrome browser, right? So Google Chrome browser extensions do not require, in most cases, admin credentials. This is a user space installation right into the browser. And so these extensions are just part of the browser. They don't require an admin to log in and put any additional elevated or escalated privileges to install, which makes them very dangerous.
So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, we'll just assume that I'm in HR and I got stuff to do. I've got 10 jobs, 10 tasks to do, and they're not paying me enough. So I'm just trying to find whatever I can to make my life easier. I can't get IT to come over to my desk. There's a tool out there. It's going to promise me the world. I can click on it and install it. Poof. What happens?
Well, I mean, here, what we need to be able to do is have some controls around installing the extensions within the browser. If you have personal profiles in Chrome, yes, you can't control those, but there's a way to actually tie in a corporate profile within Chrome where you can limit what's available to that profile.
So enterprise managed, absolutely. And so the problem that I see with the enterprise managed browser, like Chrome, is that it's hit or miss. Like, they don't do all of them, or users have installed the Chrome browser before they started administering the enterprise version. So you have this mismatch of personally managed versus company managed, and it gets to be very, very hard to actually clean up. So if you are an enterprise or your company looking to do this, do it across the board, do it quickly so that you can eliminate that personal versus enterprise, and where this danger really lies. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have people with the personally installed Chrome that a week or two from now are going to download one of these malicious extensions, and you're going to have ransomware running rampant on your network, and you're not going to know why, because you have these controls in place. But we could pivot this into the enterprise browser, the secure browser, which is a whole different story.
Yeah.
But I want to give Google and the Chrome team credit for really being proactive. This is the second or third time we've mentioned on this podcast about Google taking some actions to make you safer as you browse. So kudos to that team.
Yeah, I think last week was the AI is being used to cut down certain sites.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that a company like Google can do for the browser. One of the challenges though with the different profiles is sometimes you forget which profile you're in, and so even if there's ability to do the corporate profile, that might not be enough. So I like the fact of looking at enterprise browser and maybe having a standalone browser that is, I think a lot of these are built on Chromium anyways, so the user experience is similar, but there's more controls.
Absolutely. But every discussion I've ever had with an end user about an enterprise browser was not favorable, right? They don't want to change what they love. And the old joke was, Internet Explorer is used to download Chrome, boom, and then it's uninstalled, right? And I don't want to bash Microsoft because they've made a lot of improvements as well. But what I mean is people love Chrome. The people who use it are, just raving fans. So getting them to change to anything else is difficult, especially a secure browser that they're not familiar with. And there's a number of them on the market. But this is the biggest challenge that I've seen trying to implement secure browser.
Yeah, if someone told me you can't use Google anymore, I'd be like, I don't need my computer. Although recently I've been using more GPT stuff because it has better outputs, like instructional stuff. So obviously, like with a lot of the audio video, I run into a lot of issues. I'm like, how do I do this? And I say, I have this product, I own these things. This is my issue. What does it say? And it literally gives me step by step how to troubleshoot. And that's what I was doing last week when I ran into a couple of issues. So Google doesn't necessarily help with that, but it is kind of nice to have a tool that will give you kind of a framework to follow. And Google hasn't really done that. So I've kind of been moving away from that. But typical browser, like I just got an iPhone, but guess what I installed on my home screen?
Chrome.
Well, it's like the Google search bar at the very top.
Oh yeah.
So I'm probably in this boat of people that are too familiar with one tool and don't necessarily want to go outside of that.
By the way, I think there's a lawsuit on that where Google bought the rights to auto install Chrome and the default search for Apple products.
Oh, really? So I might get paid like 65 cents? It might be. I could use that. It will buy me half of a hot dog at Costco. That's interesting. I didn't know that. But so maybe not necessarily it wasn't a topic, but I do find enterprise browser came up a lot for me over the last 2 years. I've seen a lot more people talking about it. Now, I don't know if we're going to name anyone. Maybe if you guys want to plug anyone specific, maybe there's some companies out there. I don't know.
There's some great ones out there. I don't think I want to plug anybody specific right now, but I mean, there's a lot of good ones out there. But I really think that users specifically have pushbacks mostly on the development side, but I can tell you where it is very useful is on the contractor and the freelancer and the people who are
BYOD, bring your own device.
Yeah. So, if you have to ship a laptop to a foreign country, that takes you a lot of logistics and customs and have to wait a period of time when you can just deploy a secure browser to their laptop. And you don't care if they have malware in their laptop because that secure browser creates a very, defined edge between their corporate browser and their personal machine. So you have contractors in, let's say, India or Ukraine or some of these hotspots where you can't get hardware. Enterprise browser is a great option for those contractors. You just deploy this browser and all of a sudden they can get secure access to corporate resources without having to ship any hardware.
Yeah, it's more of like a VDI alternative, right?
Yeah.
I think the virtual desktop experience has not been great. There's a lot of user experience problems, I would say.
Well, depending on what they're doing, like if they're doing anything that requires compute, it becomes a dog, right?
Well, I think a lot of our applications today, it's got to be a majority, are web-based.
Me too. The words right out of my mouth.
Applications, web-based. And so just pushing that into a browser actually becomes a lot easier. It's easier to deploy. And then you don't have to provision a whole VDI for it.
So if you think about all of the remote workers that we we created after COVID, and then this whole going back to the office, scenario, remote work. We still have a lot of people working from home, right? And so 90% of the applications those employees are accessing are web-based, either over port 80 or 443, obviously 443 now. In other words, it's just a browser session. You don't have to deploy hardware for that. What you do need to do to deploy a virtual desktop is if you need to get in and manage servers or move laterally across the network or do heavy compute renderings or printing, those kind of things require an actual VDI session. But 90% of your employees' productivity is web-based. And so they can use a secure browser and just do it right from home. And it's going to actually improve their user experience and be faster, definitely be more secure.
Yeah, there are some legacy thick applications that have to be installed. And so in those cases, I guess a browser doesn't work. But I'm seeing a lot more of that changing today where it's web-based.
So when Troy was talking about contractors using it, the first thing I thought of was third-party risk management. This is just a random thought that I had. If secure browsers were secure enterprise browsers were a thing back when Target had their issue, would that have been prevented?
Yeah, because you give that really, this is an HVAC company, right, the access through a secure browser, and you don't have to deploy a machine or even have them VPN in. Is once you VPN in, you're on the network. And that's how that attack happened.
They had unfettered access once they got in. And if you remember back when that happened, it was like 2013 or 14, we weren't really looking at our third parties like we are today, right? And so I think the enterprise browser would have certainly helped, but there's a lot more tools and access reviews and vendor reviews and things that we do now to prevent third parties from having access to too much information. Secure browser is a great option for a third party who needs logical access to your network. Most of your third parties, you're not giving access to your network. You're not giving access to your applications. But in those cases, if you do have to do that, your enterprise browser could be a good option for you.
Or you shouldn't give them access.
It might be a business need, so you have to, be the Department of Yes, but.
The Department of Yes, but. You guys have a t-shirt that says that?
Yeah.
I'm from the Department of Yes, but.
It's usually, the Department of No, and we're trying to change that for security. So they don't want to say no anymore. The users just get used to the security department stopping them from doing their jobs. And so the answer of yes, you can do that, but with these limitations or guardrails in place.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at business, it's moving at the speed of light with AI. I mean, we're doing things differently today than we did last month even. So security cannot be a roadblock or your company's going to fall behind, period. So we have got to change our mentality from you can't do that to here's how you do that safely.
I definitely see a strong use case for third-party risk with the enterprise browser. I was just maybe more so curious on how many people actually implement it for that, because it's not necessarily.
I think that's the number one use case, to be honest.
I do think so, yeah. I know that's what I was looking at it for in previous roles.
So it's not necessarily like a VDI replacement then, because I know some people that have a large
No, this is absolutely a potential VDI replacement. If everything that these contractors need to have access to is web-based, they don't need a VDI.
But what if they're employees? So say you have like a contact center, right?
Well, most employees have a machine that's managed, that's deployed to them. And so you don't necessarily need to have, you could layer on an enterprise browser in that sense.
Okay.
But you should already have some local controls there. I think the number one use case, though, would be a contractor who you don't want to provision an actual laptop to. And so like what Troy was saying earlier, trying to get laptops to some of these countries, especially if you're a global company, you just don't have the ability to ship them a laptop. And so if you say, look, use your personal laptop, we'll give you a browser.
Yeah.
Secure it that way. You get much faster onboarding for those contractors.
While we're on the subject, I do want to give a shout out to Joe Sullivan. I think you guys all know Joe from his Uber days, but he has a charity that he collects laptops and refurbishes them and hand delivers them, sometimes personally, to kids in Ukraine who need them for learning at school and those who have been displaced by the war. So if you're a corporation that is getting rid of some equipment, Joe Sullivan is the one you should call.
And also, as a charity, the rest of it, they donate it. So I'm sure they get some sort of like tax benefit.
They do, and he will give you a DOD certified wipe certificate, so you don't have to worry about your data.
Okay, because there are companies out there that will take your stuff and pay you like a few dollars.
Mhm.
But I'd be curious to see like, the benefits of a donation, right?
Yeah, I think going to a good cause and helping kids learn is always much better than just getting a couple of dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're those companies you're going to take them and resell them.
Yeah, they buy them for like $10 a piece and they sell them for like $150.
Right.
So that's why I was asking because like, is it really worth a $10? That's like who's on the $10 bill? I can't even think right now. We'll just say you get 2 Abraham Lincolns, so you don't want that. You want to help the kids, right? Especially the younger ones. So we talked enough about the last topic. So we'll kind of move on to the next one because it's been about 20 minutes.
I will say this though, if you have any questions about my preference in secure browser, ping me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and ask me questions. I have preferences for different scenarios.
I have stronger preferences.
I don't want
So reach out to me. I got your preferences.
or Damien. I'm sure we align. And the reason I can't say a specific name is because some are better at things than others, and so I want to be very fair and transparent.
So, and I know Damien's got his where he wants you to go, and I will say, and if you want to buy them, you should talk to me.
There you go.
Hey, let's do it, right? So let's go to the next topic. Essentially was $400 million. Now, when I see that number, I think scorched earth.
Now, is that total cost of the breach, or is that like the ransom that they paid?
No. And I don't think there was a ransom. This is like loss in profits for Marks and Spencer. Yeah, $400 million loss of profit, right?
Yep. Marks and Spencer, for those of you who don't know, is a clothing retailer, very popular.
Well, and food. Every time I go to London, I love to drop in and get some English trifle on their refrigerators. Really good.
Really? How much is it?
Reminds me of the Friends episode where Joey's making the trifle, and never mind. You know the one I'm talking about. It's great.
I don't.
The pages were stuck together.
Oh,
That's up the recipes.
I'm sure there's more to that story. So I'm looking at the article, and what they were saying is recovery efforts, system downtime, and significant sales disruption. The full scope is under investigation. So they haven't necessarily said what it was, but what they have said is because of this, the losses in profit can be attributed to the incident.
Because there's loss in revenue, there's brand impact, cost to remediate.
There's litigation costs, for having to not only defend yourself in court from the class action that's going to follow, but also to provide privacy notices to all of those folks about their data that was lost and so on.
But here's the question, right? $400 million. How much is the right amount to spend to mitigate a risk?
Yeah, if you look at risk mitigation here, how much should I have spent to mitigate this $400 million? And that's the answer. It's like a smoke detector. You don't, invest in a smoke detector after the fire. The smoke detector is going to be going off, and you don't know the value of a smoke detector until you have a fire in your house. So it's hard for a CISO to walk in and ask for money when you haven't had an incident, when you haven't had something burn the house down. And so this is a great example. I actually sent this article to a friend of mine this week because this hit home about that very question. How much is the right amount to spend on cybersecurity? How much to invest in our programs and in our, protections? How much is enough? I get that question all the time. How much is enough to invest in cybersecurity? And honestly, as long as you are, using the guardrails of a framework like NIST or whatever it is that you might map to in your regulatory compliance structure, and you're constantly testing yourself, given a benchmark of where you are, growing and maturing, and investing in those areas where you have gaps, I think that's the most important thing about how much is enough. And you can actually quantify that with using the FAIR model and taking the MITRE ATT&CK framework and doing some, attack stimulation so that you're getting, where your gaps are and how much is it going to cost to fill that gap versus how much is the risk for that particular exploit. So there's a whole lot of math behind that, but additional stuff that you can articulate, in a boardroom.
The hardest part really is to first predict that this is going to cost $400 million. I don't know if there's a lot of companies that can go in and say, I know what the damages are going to be, right? I'm sure Marks and Spencer did not know this is going to be a $400 million and counting expense.
Yes.
Now, if they take that and say, look, if we spend $400 million so we don't have a $400 million incident, is that still worth it?
It sounds like car insurance.
We don't know the total number that they had in their IT and their security budget. And I know there's ratios out there. So
No, but I'm taking like the absolute worst case scenario. You spend $400 million to stop a $400 million incident.
I think that calculation is really in the risk department where they can say, worst case scenarios would go out of business. That's the worst case scenario.
If you go backwards,
leading up to that, here's what it would look like. But I mean, if you look at the
because
total,
like if you spent, let's say you spent $400 million to prevent a $400 million incident, are you still ahead? I'd say yes, right?
absolutely, it's your money in the news. You're investing in a program and people and defense.
No, that's not realistic. I'm just saying.
No, I don't know. I was gonna say, like, what dream are you in right now?
Well, if you look at the Change Healthcare, breach, that was over $1 billion in damages. How could anyone have predicted that the single point of failure in the healthcare payment system would cause such an outage? There's no way to predict that. And so, CISOs have a hard job. Security leaders have a hard job walking into a boardroom and convincing these folks the sky could fall when they've never seen a cloud in the sky in their life. So, pat on the back, just doing a great job for the CISO to keep the lights on all the time and make the situation look like it's great. But there's a lot of long hours, long weekends. And, this is Memorial Day, right? This is the hackers' #1 time to attack, on the holidays, 4th of July, Christmas, things like that. So,
yeah, because they're thinking everyone is on vacation.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, any operational security team should be running 24/7 anyways.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. No, I've heard some stories where everyone's from the security team is at like a conference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's if you have everybody going to a conference like RSA or Black Hat, is that also an opportune time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so. And I think it's also, you're going to have round the clock, follow the sun, whatever mantra you have there. But what I mean is that holidays are the times where we're usually standing up and going 24 hours on an incident because, that's when the bad guys are attacking us or catching us, because they know we're not sitting at the keyboard. You may have a minimum amount of people on for the holiday, et cetera, et cetera. All of a sudden the bells and whistles go off and everybody's coming in anyway.
Drunk and they have an Uber into work.
Right from the golf course.
Or
Well,
course.
any program should have contingencies. You don't have everybody, just like you don't have everybody flying the same airplane. You don't have everyone go to the same cybersecurity conference at the same time, and you don't have everyone taking the same holidays.
Key-man clause, absolutely. Another thing is, like, it depends on the industry you're in, your business, right? Some highly regulated or government businesses, as an example, have, just tremendous amount of people on 24/7 watching these things. It just depends on where you fall in that line of, resilience that you're building and how much you want to invest in people. There you go on the investment side again. How many people are enough? Right? That's a tough one. That's just as tough as how much cybersecurity investment is enough. How many people are enough? Do I need more over in third-party risk, or I need them in, DevOps, or do I need them in, security architecture or, training? These are all great questions, and you have to come up with some way to justify your ask. And really, what is the return on investment for the company? And that is a difficult thing to articulate, but the CISOs who can have that presence to articulate that well in a boardroom and translate tough technical language into, fiduciary responsibility or risk, those are the ones who are the successful CISOs I've met.
Yeah, I think one of the most important statistics or trends that you have to monitor within your cyber program will be your mean time to detect, obviously. And so if you can have that in an acceptable range, just detecting whether an anomaly is happening, and then the next phase is mean time to respond, right? How long does it take our teams to respond to that detection of an anomaly? And then your mean time to remediate. How long does it take you? And I think all of these things kind of just add up to an acceptable risk. So how much time does all of this take to happen? And are you staffed for that? Right.
So interesting question that I'm thinking of while my ring taps on this thing like Damien told me. We're going to pretend that I'm a CISO and I just got hired at a new role. I'm walking in fresh. I'm obviously I know what the business does because I was hired. At some point, I know what I'm getting myself into, but I don't necessarily know what I'm walking into. What is a reasonable amount of time for an executive that's recently hired to see the landscape, understand it, maybe have some tests done, figure out where they're at from a security posture, and present that to the board? Because I think the worst thing that could happen is you will go in expecting everything is good, finding out nothing is right, um, and then having to take the blame, right? Because maybe you weren't aware, but the last person that was in the role lost the job because of some failure. But maybe they're not letting you know that, especially if you're not a publicly traded company, right? And it's a private company, that information isn't easy to find. So, what's a reasonable amount of time for a new executive to land in a role, evaluate their situation, and present to say, hey, this is where I think we should focus our time and energy because these areas have the most impact to the business?
2 dates easily come to mind, 90 days and 180 days. Your 90-day plan is to get your head wrapped around what you're walking into and getting your core metrics ready for your board deck. And then 180 days, you should have a really good grasp on who your stakeholders are, who your key champions are for every division that you have. And then also that roadmap and how you are benchmarked against your industry's number, whatever that is between 1 and 5. Your industry might be retail. And so retail should be between 3.8 and 4.2, whatever that is. And, you should have a really good idea in that first 90 days of what your numbers are and where you stand up against your industry peers. That next 90 days, so 180 days, you should have a 1, 3, and a 5-year plan of how you're going to improve and justify what you're going to invest in and what the major prioritized gaps are that you're deploying capital to fix.
I would go even more granular than that. I like the 90-day plan, but we always do a 30, 60, 90 coming in brand new. By that 90-day, though, you should have a good sense of where you're at. Now, I would hope that if you get hired and this company already had an incident or other issues going on, they would disclose that on day one.
You would hope.
Oh, they have to. I mean, if it's in their best interest, right? I can't come in and just be totally blind, right? Yeah, most of the employees will already know that something happened and they'll tell you.
That should surface in your interview process, right? I mean, hopefully you've asked enough questions to know what you're walking into. You should definitely be asking questions about the team and the culture and why the previous person left.
Right.
What are the things that I'm going to walk into that I don't know about? What are the what makes this role successful? Those are great questions. But I think the 30, 60-day check-ins are absolutely necessary with your direct supervisor. Here's what I'm doing, boss. Whoever you are, CIO, CFO.
Oh, you don't even have to be a CISO for that. I think if you're coming in, even as a security analyst.
He said, remember, I'm a CISO for a minute.
Yeah, but I mean, there's other people watching. They're not CISOs. So if you're coming in as an analyst, security engineer, security architect, doesn't really matter. I think the 30, 60, 90, just have a plan, work that out with your leadership and figure out what's going to make you successful in that role.
100%. And I think, as a CISO specifically, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders to define a program and look at the program you have and the people you have and then start identifying those, what I call rock stars. I had one at my last company that just stood out. Everybody knew he was a rock star, great guy. You need people like that to take up the mantle and help you achieve your goals as the CISO. So in that case, Fern, I would say definitely the 90, 180, that's more getting your program in order and getting ready to present your metrics and your key, success factors. For any employee getting into cyber, no matter what your role is, you absolutely want to have a 30, 60, 90 plan. What makes you successful in your role, but what makes the role successful for you? These kind of things you should be looking at every day and evaluating, where you are in the industry and what you want to do and start plotting your path. I don't want to talk about, manifesting it, but honestly, visualize yourself in the role that you want to be in and start heading in that direction. Study for it, talk to people who do it, just immerse yourself in it, and it just seems to come to it.
I think we're missing one key important ingredient, right? I think we talked a lot about analyzing numbers, where we are, but what about the human element? I think a lot of it comes down to building relationships and building trust, especially if you're a new employee. If you're a leader, even more important that you're building just the confidence of the team so that you're not throwing them under the bus coming in saying, oh, well, we missed all this stuff and I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? You can't come in with that attitude. I think, if the team and the cybersecurity department is not performing up to expectations, just figure out why. There may be other reasons why. There may be other blockers outside of security within the business that's making those numbers come down.
I think I'm going to trademark this saying, but cybersecurity is a people sport, period. the data, the trends, the attacks, the attackers, they come and go. The technology comes and goes. People are the only mainstay to invest in your people, invest in a culture where people want to come to work. And that's what's going to make a program successful. At the end of the day, it's all about the people that you create through that process and make them successful. And I think a CISO is judged by how many CISOs they create in their lifetime. And so, keep account of how many people you're mentoring, lifting up, putting them in a place to succeed, giving them opportunities to learn, and really mentoring them. I mean, that's so important to me beyond anything else I do with bits and bytes and keyboards.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from people that I've spoken with in like a CISO role, is the phrases, at least that recurs, is security is about the people, right? But back to Damien's point, where it's like you don't necessarily want to show up to a new role and say,
And be the asshole.
yeah. Probably the fastest way to say it. But I've heard a lot of stories where people go in and it's like not necessarily like a know-it-all,
Mhm.
but in a lot of ways it comes off that way. I think a lot of times people mean well, and they see what they bring to the table and say, oh, we can do all these cool things, we can do all these things that you haven't done, or there's these opportunities, and it to them it feels like they're making an impact like quick. But to a lot of people, especially if they have direct reports or they have people that that they report up to, it might feel a little intrusive, like, hey, your house is dirty, I'm gonna fix it. And it's like, well, it's dirty for a reason over there. Or maybe there's a reason for these things. And then people kind of show up guns blazing, and then within 3 months they're out the door because they kind of um not necessarily Ramboed it, but they went in guns blazing.
Mhm.
So this is just another thing to think about as well, right?
This is going to be controversial, but it's very direct.
Same.
Our industry there are some people in our industry that have a lot of hubris, a lot of ego out there. And so I ask my peers and leaders to humbly, use empathy as they lead, be a servant leader. Sean Calfan, preaches that all the time as well. Be a servant leader, empower your people. Do not be the asshole. Sometimes firm people are just assholes. He doesn't come in and act like an asshole. He is an asshole, or she is. Sorry. But my point is, for other cyber leaders, no matter what your role is, CISO or any director, manager, whatever it is, empower your people, lift them up, speak good about them in the rooms they're not in. Those things are so important to making this industry what it should be. We're just lifting each other up and stopping the bad guys and becoming a solid unit as a team.
Yeah, I read something either yesterday or the day before, and I thought it was interesting because it had a lot of traction, not necessarily security related, but a post on LinkedIn that said, do you remember all the bullies in high school? They didn't go away; they just became executives, right? And I was like, oh, that's kind of a spicy thing to say. So, I clicked and read, and it wasn't necessarily saying that everyone in an executive role is that. It's saying that there's a lot of people that make it into those roles, and then they use that power to treat their people poorly. They use the position to like politically, and they use essentially their habits from high school to put people down versus lifting them up. And it had a lot of people chiming in, agreeing with it. But the opener was interesting because it said, these people, they didn't go away. They exist, but in a world that is a little bit different. So it kind of like ties back to your point, is you want to be a good person, be a good leader, help people versus hold them back. Or I think really what the crux of the situation was on this article was, you don't, people feel intimidated. And when they feel intimidated, they kind of hold the stars down or they keep stars from shining, essentially is what it said.
Mhm.
And that's the exact opposite of what you're talking about.
Something else that goes along with this subject, and again, it's not controversial, but it's true, is that we let toxic employees stay around too long because they're good at what they do.
That was in the article too. It said that.
And a
So,
toxic employee can ruin a culture faster than anything else. When you have somebody who's making everybody's life miserable, but they're just a little bit better performer, or in a lot of cases, they may have this, knowledge of the company that nobody else has. That's where you have to make a command decision to take care of that and for the betterment of the team.
It's like any pro sports, right? If you sign the greatest star to play on your team, but if they're a total diva, can the team operate as best as a team, or is it a one player show, right? I don't know. It's kind of that debates happened where sports teams go out there and sign the best stars or trade for the best stars, but if they don't have a solid bench or a solid team, you don't see them succeed very often.
Well, I think that there were some initial reports that that's what happened with Deion Sanders' son. He was expected to be like a first-round draft pick, and then he fell to like 200 and something. I don't really follow sports, but I know enough. And then I saw articles that said that the GMs that he had met with, he hadn't prepared anything. He just kind of showed up and said, like, you know who I am, like, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I don't know if any of that was substantiated, but yeah, I mean, it could be, right? Because when I'm hiring somebody, it's not strictly on what they know today. Like I said, number one is really their personality and do they fit? And when we're building departments, security departments, a lot of times it's like a puzzle. You don't need the people who are super senior all the time. You need to have middle, right? Really experienced technical people. Then you need to have people in the middle, and then you need to have entry level. Yeah, and they all have to play different types of roles, and they're in different stages of their career. And when you're putting that puzzle together, you're also forecasting where they're going to go, how they're going to grow, where they're going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. So you can hopefully guide them and train them to get to that spot. So I think building a cybersecurity department, it's critical to just analyze the talent you have, but also the personality fits and the culture. Super, super important.
So for anyone listening, just be a good person. Be helpful, right? Be someone that's always willing to help versus say something like, that's not my job. That's not my job. That's probably the worst thing that I hear from anyone. So I think we did pretty well on that topic. Got a couple more things to talk about, right? The interesting one is not necessarily a topic, but scams that are happening. More so prevalent within the last couple months, I think, where there are scams coming out of the Philippines, right? International numbers texting people saying that they haven't paid their tolls. Now, this is actually interesting to me because we went to San Diego to hang out at the beach. And on the way, you have the option, toll roads or not. And I said, you know what? I'd rather pay a few bucks to get there faster because I have 2 kids in the back just being kids. So I'd rather get to a place faster than be in the car longer with, 2 younger kids. So we passed by some toll roads. I got the bill in the mail. I actually just forgot to pay them. And I got a notice somewhere that said, if you don't pay, there's like a $300 fine. Something ridiculous. I'm like, oh man, okay. Now, what actually happened as well is my wife got a text that said, hey, your stuff is due. And that's actually what prompted me. So good thing for the bad guys is they reminded my wife that I had something, but because we were in that situation, but not everyone's in that role. But she could have easily clicked a link, gone and done a payment, and we would have been cooked. Now, luckily, I tell her not to click on anything ever. So she has that, awareness, but not everyone has that. And it's interesting because now they're in this, the old ones where your package is on its way. So what package? What's being delivered? I didn't buy anything. There is, we couldn't deliver the package, click here to schedule your next pickup. So it's always about things coming to your house. Now they're saying you haven't paid your fees. And if you don't pay, we're going to suspend your driver's license. And
there's always going to be some sort of urgency. There's always going to be some consequences, or they're trying to entice you to click on it. But I mean, this is a real simple one. I think we're seeing it come from international phone numbers, different country codes. And I think in this case, the Philippines.
That's a good indicator. Absolutely. I think, I've seen this one particular toll roads text very recently across my neighbors, my family, both in the West Coast, East Coast. And, a lot of people on this podcast say, I would never click on that. I'm not stupid. But your mom might, your dad might, your grandmother might, So you got to be, forthright and tell your family, don't click on this stuff. These are scams. These things can lead to financial loss. They can also lead to malware. And they're just getting better at this. This toll one is pretty convincing, especially with all these toll roads that you have where you have to go in and pay online, like the California one that Fern mentioned. But, it's very tricky. And I think the reason we're seeing this resurgence or this surgence of this text scam is because it's successful. They're making money. And so the more money they make, the more you're going to get it in your phone. So just be looking for it.
The funniest one I saw was you owe toll to the state of Arizona.
Yeah, do they even have toll roads there? Okay, I was like, really?
Yeah, no toll roads in Arizona?
I mean, I don't travel too far beyond the 60 and the 101, unless it's like if it's.
Yeah, I don't think there are any toll roads that now, but I've never seen one. I come to Arizona a lot, so.
Yeah, I may have fallen for, let's say fallen, but I would have gone, oh, okay, that's interesting because, there's the new 202 that goes like behind Awatuki. There's the 303.
Yeah, none of those are toll.
Okay, I don't ever go that way, so maybe.
And by the way, so this is coming from a +63 number. I found out that's the Philippines, but you can have an online PBX, like an asterisk server, stood up pretty quickly to mask your area code. This could be coming from your same area code. A lot of hackers and attackers do that with scams. They'll mimic your area code so that you're more likely to click on it. And I just saw this software now within the last week that is it allows you to send text messages from your computer that are blue in the Apple devices. So now they're going to be able to mask and mimic a real Apple phone.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to mimic the phone number. So they're getting better. I got to tell you guys, just do some homework on this. Be looking for anything that you're not expecting. Don't click on it. Just don't click on it. Delete it.
I'll take it one step further. If you ever get a text and you don't know who it came from, do not respond. So a lot of times you'll get a hello or, hey, you want to go to the movies or you want to go for dinner tomorrow, and you don't know who it's from. That is a tactic to see if your number is active.
Oh, okay.
And then once you respond to that, they're like, oh, now that number is out there and they're going to be sending way more attacks.
Oh, okay.
Same goes on a list, and the bad guys share a list. The bad guys share threat intel or intel better than anybody I've seen. We struggle to share intel from public and private and business to business. The bad guys don't care. They just share this stuff.
So what do they call that? It's not threat intel. Because I'm intel.
Yeah.
It's like whale intel or fish intel.
Donkey.
Intel on the fish and the whales that you can go catch.
They call it their duck bucket. It's just like ducks in a bucket or a fish in a bucket. I always get those messages, and I don't know when it started, but for the longest time, I would always like laugh at people that get all these texts and emails like, oh, you guys are clearly not good at keeping your stuff private. Now I'm on the list, and I get stuff all the time. I don't know when it happened, but it happened at some point. And I always get a message like, hey, like, this is Barbara. Do you know this or that? And, Lucy said this. And like, I don't even know who these people are. Like, I've had my number for at least 15 years. So there's no reason for someone to think that my number is someone else, right? I never respond. I just delete it. But if you respond, that's almost like so here's an interesting thing, and I don't know if it's real anymore, but is unsubscribing from any sort of form good? Because when you unsubscribe, it essentially does the same thing as a response. They know it was delivered, but they don't know that the inbox is active. So when you unsubscribe, does it then let them know that you're actively using that box or that address, and that they can just sell it to someone else? What do you do? Do you just not unsubscribe, or do you just like cook the email and just build a new one?
A little bit of both, right? So now there's a lot of intelligence platforms out there for sending email to see if you clicked on it, if you opened it, all these things. So before you can even open the email, the bad guy's going to know whether or not your box is active or not. Mm-hmm. So that's not really a great defense. I do unsubscribe to things unless it's something I don't know. Like if I sign up for a newsletter or order something off of a website and now I'm getting their marketing emails, I will use the unsubscribe button. But just be careful, because if you get a phish that is not a legitimate email, that unsubscribe button could be laden with malware or taken to a malicious site. So that is a very common tactic as well. So before you unsubscribe, make sure it's a legitimate email from the real company that you're expecting.
Yeah, if it's a major list, I will unsubscribe. If I don't recognize it, I just don't even look at it. I don't even open it, to be honest, because there are trackers in the emails that tell, the sender whether you opened it and their click rate. I mean, we use that in marketing.
Yeah.
So
Unless you have Proton Mail. Apparently, Proton Mail stops that.
Yeah.
I just read that last night, actually. I was doing something. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, there are, and by the way, there's email security for businesses that will block a lot of the trackers as well. Here's my strategy for work for business email. I really don't open anything that's not addressed directly to me in the 2-line. If it's part of a mailing list, it goes into another filter. On my personal email, here's what's tricky with my personal email. I've had one of the very first Gmail accounts, and so a lot of people use my email. Sometimes it will show up with legitimate receipts or legitimate policies, insurance policies, and things like that. And I never really opened them. But be really careful, right? Because if I had ill intent, I can go and cancel their policy if I really wanted to. I've seen this happen on airline forums. Like if you post your itinerary, but it has the locator code, it's really easy for you to go onto the website. You have the person's last name, you have their locator code for the airline to cancel their flight.
Oh, yeah.
There is no 2-factor for that, which I'm surprised there isn't.
Wow. Scary.
Yeah. Just don't share stuff like that. Like, do you remember back when people were getting their COVID shots? They were posting the little COVID card that had like the dates and like their date of birth and their information on it. Like, you guys, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I think the problem is just a lot of people don't think about maybe the risk that's involved.
Or the games, the online games that say put in your favorite color. Or if you do all these things, this is your
Prize.
No, this is your name, Disney name, princess name, or your porn star name, and so if you go backwards, it's because it's if your month of your birth, your day.
Oh,
yeah, and then take that and add it to the first pet's name that you ever had. Exactly. So what do you think the attackers are going to do with that, right?
Imagine creating a form that's a Facebook app that says, hey, what was your mother's maiden name? What's your social security number? How about your date of birth? And people just go right through because they want to see what that Disney princess looks like, It's please don't, please.
What's your Disney princess name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can go backwards, and then now you got everything, got our information.
I've seen that, and I thought, it's like, this is like the dumbest thing ever. Like, who cares what your Disney name? It wasn't Disney, but it was like what is your
Superhero name? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is your cool name? It's like, if you have time to be submitting these forms, like, you got bigger problems.
Well, now it takes it a step further, because some of these, you click on it, and you're actually granting them access to your entire Facebook profile and scans it, and it gives you a result.
Yeah. And I think most people that are in tech are the default help desk for their family. Right. So just be a good person and tell your family, like, don't click. Basically just don't click anything unless it comes from someone you know or a reputable source, which is questionable as well. Just like, don't do stuff, because the more people are aware not to do certain things, the less you're going to have to be fixing their computer, because,
Absolutely. And you got to have some red flags with this, right? You got to tell your family, especially those who are not tech savvy. Like, if you're ever asked for your date of birth, your social security number, your driver's license number, these identifiers are very protected for reasons. It's a problem. So, definitely just get out of what you're doing and go on about your business.
So the last topic, this would be a quick one. Krebs on security hit with the largest DDoS attack in history.
6.3 terabytes, I think. So for those of you who don't know what a distributed denial of service attack is, basically it's a lot of computers sending internet traffic to a single point, trying to overwhelm their servers, their infrastructure. It's basically flooding their pipes as much as they can, shoving all this traffic at a single point. What we saw in the past, I don't know about this case, but the Mirai botnet, all these home routers and such were taken over and enlisted into this massive network of machines that were able to send this traffic at a victim in 2016 that took out the whole East Coast, including Amazon and other sites. And so this Krebs on security was another interesting one. So I have a tip for this one. Check your home routers, whatever you have at home, whether it's a cable modem or router at your edge, if you have a firewall or some kind of a switch at your house, please update that firmware. Make sure that you change the default admin password on that, and make sure that you are always keeping that up to date, because that's how these things are being compromised.
Yeah, so to expand on that, right, what these attackers are doing is they're taking over the devices. Any internet-connected device, IoT, it could be wireless cameras, it could be your Wi-Fi router, and so they could have millions of these under their control, and then just send a ton of traffic to a very single location and to try to flood them out and then take them offline.
Really? I didn't realize that that's how it worked.
Yeah, how many people change their default password on their home router? I think that's
Man,
number one.
I'm not answering that question right now. Actually, I just picked up a new router from Cox, so I have some wiggle room, but
I would also watch for unexpected traffic coming off your network, because if you go and you buy, let's say, a brand new webcam for security, and it's not one of the major name brands, you just say you got a cheap one
yeah,
from China, right?
yeah.
I'd be concerned about that, because you don't know what kind of malware could be pre-installed, and you plug that into your network. Now that joins the botnet that could be part of this.
We've seen supply chain interdiction with these malicious bots already programmed in. Some of this stuff come out of China, which is why Huawei was blacklisted in the U.S. Maybe still is, but these kind of things where it's not a name brand, or if it's something from overseas, make sure that you are changing that and doing some kind of scan on it.
Yeah, because you could definitely get a vacuum for a fifth of the price, like the little RoboVac type things on Amazon.
That's for home. I think even in the business, in the office, you got the same problems, right? Users will come in and maybe plug in their own Wi-Fi router. Do you know if they're doing that? Do you have proper network access controls?
Layman, I have a question for you. So you said look for suspicious traffic coming off your devices. How would you do that if you're somebody listening to this podcast? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a device that is communicating out and you're not expecting it to, that might be one of the key things you look for. Right now, it's hard, it's difficult, especially if it's going to a cloud service to back up video. But at least you know where it should be sending that data, for sure, right?
So for me, I always monitor that in my edge device, which is a firewall. So I look at the logs and see what's talking out, especially if it's talking to Russia, China, Iran, all the access of whatever. So those are the ways I detect it, but your case might be different.
Yeah, I have a Meraki setup with the Meraki, the MX67. So it has all these rules, and you kind of do all that fun stuff. So not everyone has that. So it would be interesting if maybe there's something kind of add on to this article at some point on how to do it if you just have a typical router from like your internet provider.
I think I've seen most of the routers now not ship with a standard default admin password. They'll have the password on a sticker on the bottom as part of the serial number, or you put in the serial number as the password.
Oh yeah, that's how Cox does it. But I guess maybe more so just ways for people that maybe don't have certain tools or appliances that they could use at like a firewall. Not everyone has a firewall, especially at home. It might be interesting to kind of share some cool stuff. But interesting stories. I think this week was some of these stories went by a lot faster than I had realized, because check the clock and it's like 25 minutes in. So I think we did pretty well for keeping it close to an hour. Some good topics. Next week, we'll have more. But for the people listening, now you can go enjoy your Memorial Day Monday.
That's a wrap for episode 5. The first time we're actually all in studio together.
All right. The first time, yeah. So hit that subscribe button. And if we get to 500, someone's getting a blazer.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep. See you
you.
soon.